Welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. It is January 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. We will call this meeting to order. Would all rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any corrections to the agenda as it's distributed? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. The agenda is approved as distributed. Next up, public hearing. Public hearing on reassessment of property at 1420 North 3rd Street. That's on, the rules for the public hearing are available on page 6 of the packet. And let's start with a staff presentation. We don't have an applicant presentation tonight, and then a time for public comment. So,
Madam Mayor, members, I'll say the time.
oh, yes, so we're going to open that at 7:02 p.m.
Mayor, members, with the hearing, I'll be providing the staff report. This is for a project that, as you know, the council approved and is significantly or substantially complete. We have some issues related to growth of grass and things like that that will have to be covered certainly in the spring, but the project is completed. As you may know or have read, all properties were assessed along this project according to the city assessment policy, which has been in place for really just about 2 decades. At that time, we had waivers from the majority of the properties. You held the appropriate hearing, and the property owner at 1420 North 3rd Street objected under the state law, under Minnesota Statute 429, and so then was able to file in district court for a reassessment or review of the property. As you are aware, the city agreed as a part of that process to provide for an appraisal or reappraisal of the property to determine the amount of money that the change from pre-construction to post-construction. As you know from your packet, staff is recommending $11,000, which is the amount that was derived from the work that was done by your specialized appraiser on this project. Notice has been sent to the property owner appropriately, and it's appropriate tonight for the council, if you so desire, to take action. You would not have to take action to establish or pass a resolution establishing the assessment, but certainly it's an appropriate time to do that. I will mention that in your packet we provide that resolution, and it stipulates as to the amount of time, which is based on your policy, the term of the repayment as a part of the assessment, and the interest rate. Again, those are determined by your city policy. If there are any questions on the part of the council, I'm happy to try and answer those. If they're not, then it's appropriate for the public to have an opportunity to discuss this issue prior to action.
Brad?
What are next steps after this? Would there be a further court proceeding, or what would be the next steps?
That would be dependent upon whether or not this assessment is appealed. Okay. If the assessment is appealed, then there would be further court appeal hearings, yes.
Other questions for Todd? In that case, we'll move on to the public comment portion of the public hearing. Is there a member of the public who'd like to make a comment at this time? Come on up. You could give us your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Carrie Leonard. I'm at 1420 North 3rd Street in St. Peter, property owner of the subject property. This is my written and signed objection. The main reason for my objection is I cannot get a fair hearing in here because I just can't. The city council thought I should pay $45,000. 2 months ago, I brought up at the council meeting the opportunity for the adjourned hearing. and Mr. Prafke said that that was wrong. This letter dated January 10th, 2022. I believe the council, your clients, received this letter as well. It says that the council can call an adjourned hearing. This letter I received December 16th. It says, the city assesses the property, and it tells me if I'm unwilling to accept that assessment, I file an objection and appeal. This is why I'm having the objection. You skipped the part about the public hearing, but you went on to say that I'm not allowed to speak to the council, and the council's not allowed to speak to me.
I don't think that's quite right.
Okay.
I think I believe the letter said that by my ethics, I am not allowed to speak to your client. I will request that you would not speak to my client based on
Yes.
the legal ethics that I am wrong about.
Yep, it says, I would respectfully request that you do not communicate with my clients, the city council, and I am instructing the city council by copy of this letter to respectfully decline any inquiry you have. So that doesn't really give me an opportunity to educate, or since they're not allowing the adjourned hearing, I can't present any of my evidence, which is exactly what happened with court when we went all the way up to the court date, and then the city attorney filed a motion to have that set aside, which I also have a copy of, the court order. So we're not in the hearing, or we're not in a legal situation right now until I appeal, and I've got 30 days to do so. In this letter dated July 1st, the previous city council had offered $10,000 as a counter offer to my $7,500, and they offered it at an interest rate of 2% over 30 years. But now today they've gone up to $11,000, 15 years, 2.75%, which is the highest interest rate than anybody on the assessment roll. I had my own appraisal done that includes comparison sales, showing a 0 market value increase. And the city council also has theirs. Some of the things highlighted were the property benefits from fire, rescue, access, mail delivery, and garbage and recycle pickup. And I believe most of the homes in the area also would receive that same benefit. I know a lot of the council members are new, and maybe they're not familiar with the special assessment policy, but the very last thing on the back says that if this does not justify a fair and equitable distribution of cost, the city council reserves the right to adjust the policy to achieve a more equitable distribution of cost to the project. This was my Exhibit E that I had prepared for the court case. All of the documents are filed on the court records, and they are public information. This one shows this property's value of $276. This one is $240. Sorry, this is very nerve-wracking, so I'm shaking. And my property value at $220. I got all of this information right off the county records, which is where your appraiser got the information. And you'll see these property owners are paying $8,700 and $7,300. And I was at 44, you've now brought it down to 11, so you're getting closer, but still not fair unless you feel that some members of the community pay more. I had a lot of things planned, but I only have 5 minutes, so I can't present it all. Here's another, for those of you that didn't see the full assessment roll, here's a list of some of the prices that people are paying. And some of them are $233, and some are $917. Let's see. This is the witness list, and it included Todd Prafke, or not even Todd, Jeff Damross and Pete Moulton. My witness list included both appraisers, because they are the ones that are truly the experts in market value. The waivers that were signed, which is actually a waiving of your rights to get this seen in front of a judge. The waivers that were signed, and we have copies of those, and they've been filed at the courthouse. There was 11 investors. I'm not an investor. I'm just a single-family home, one residence. My husband and my 5 kids, we're just trying to live in our house. We're not having a subdivision or any of that type of. 5 owner-occupied homeowners signed the waiver, and 5 did not sign. One of your investors' rental properties is deferred and at 0% interest.
We're at 5 minutes, but I'll give you
Okay.
another couple to wrap up.
My original assessment was $44,000, and the subdivision that you guys have approved the month after this, their waiver was signed for $34,000, which I believe was 4 lots. So their total per lot was $11,000. One of the things you said in your appraisal is that the property was a gravel street, and October 7th, 2019 is when city crews ripped up the street and made it gravel. I have a background in real estate, so I did a quick market analysis of each property on the assessment roll, the amount they were being assessed, and the percent that it increased their value. I think a simple, just checking the percentage that everyone's property would go up, because it should go up about the same, because it's the same benefit, because the project is general in nature. I guess I would just ask that the city council vote to be fair. That's all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now the
I'll just
next.
leave this here.
Do we ask if there are any questions?
You can ask if there's any other questions for staff or comments or.
Any questions or comments at this point? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing at 7:12. We will take this matter up under unfinished business on our agenda. Next up is approval of the minutes, which begin on page 7 of the packet. Are there any revisions to the minutes as distributed? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in, sorry, call the roll, please. I'm doubting myself. All in favor signify by saying aye of approving the minutes.
Aye.
Minutes are approved as distributed. Next up on the agenda, it's the time for visitors' comments. Do we have any visitors who would like to make a comment on any of our agenda items? Seeing none? Any visitors who would like to make comments on any matter whatsoever? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins on page 11 and concludes with a resolution on page 29. There is one addition to the consent agenda resolution, which would be the addition of Cecily Polzine to an appointment to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board for a term of 2022 through 2024. Let's see. Any questions about the consent agenda? Carrie?
I just had a question about on the bill list, and it would be the very top one, camera system install on page 15. Todd, does that relate to some of the signage we see, the new signage in the community center with
Yes.
additional cameras?
Well, yes. So there are additional cameras, security cameras that have been installed and are operational within the community center. This is part of the budget items that we talked about related to security in a number of your facilities.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The resolution approving the consent agenda appears on page 29 of the packet and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. One to Minnesota Paving and Materials for quartzite stone in the amount of $36,400. A payment to Bolton and Menk for Phase 2 of Minnesota Square Park Plaza in the amount of $14,000. Advisory Board appointments for Trish Hiscock Austin and Cecily Polzine to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and the appointment of Teresa Somm to the Tourism and Visitors Bureau, as well as the schedule of disbursements for January 6th through January 19th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Barb, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Rath,
Aye.
Councilmember Sarsfield.
Aye.
The resolution is approved with that revision, the addition of Cecily. The next step on our agenda is unfinished business. On page 30, adoption of a resolution adopting reassessment of costs related to North 3rd Street, Center, and Mcleod Streets from West St. Julian to 1,000 feet north, the project for 1420 North 3rd Street property.
Madam Mayor and members, this is the hearing that you had earlier. I'm happy to provide additional information if you would like, or if you have any additional questions of staff or your city attorney, happy to visit about those. But in front of you is included in your packet the information. The resolution is also included in your packet starting on page 32. I would mention that we do have one typographical error at the bottom of the resolution where it says your meeting is in February, where it is not. This is actually January 24th, so that's under item number 5 on page 33. Again, happy to answer any questions that you might have related to this. Again, you had a public meeting earlier. We disagree with some of the points that have been made previously and at this hearing as well. And again, happy to provide any information that you're interested in.
Any, Brad?
Just a question on if the, I believe Ms. Leonard is going to appeal. If it does go to court, is this an all or nothing thing that the judge will either choose her opinion of there's no value or our opinion of 11,000, or could a judge find middle ground?
The judge has discretion to do whatever
Okay.
he wants.
So the
I think I guess the question is, from a practical standpoint, is there no improvement?
Yeah.
Basically, that's what their appraiser is saying, that there's no increase in value. It's up to the judge.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, I think it's logical to move forward on it because, and I do believe there's a valid argument that there was improvement to the property. So yeah, I think it's fair. I was just curious as to whether it was an all or nothing
Yep.
situation.
Daryl and then Emily.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
This is a 429 project, correct?
It is.
And as per 429, there has to be a minimum assessment of 20% of the project cost, I believe is the minimum, is that correct? So 429, there has to be some assessment, otherwise the bond isn't valid, correct?
Yes.
Emily?
And again, there are multiple parcels on this project, and this is the singular objection that you've had related to the assessed amount. Waivers were signed by the majority of the project in advance. Had that not been the case, my guess is that it would be unlikely that the council would have undertaken the project.
Emily?
Just for clarity, I think we talked about this in the past, but isn't it true that the curb and gutter, like surface area, was bigger on this property, and that's sort of the reason for the higher assessment as opposed to some of the other properties in this area?
As it relates to your policy is really driven by frontage foot, and the portion related to stormwater is driven by total square footage of the parcel. And certainly this is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest parcels on this project.
That's what I thought. Thank you, Todd.
Dustin?
So, just making sure that my mind is fully around this coming into this, obviously very late in the game. Ms. Leonard had pointed out that we have an option to go into a closed session to discuss it. Is that accurate? And if so, or is that something we're choosing not to do?
You can go into closed session under attorney-client privilege, and one of the options is when there's threatened or active litigation, which obviously she is now threatening litigation. So the council does have the opportunity to go into closed session, and she mentioned that the council had made an offer and she rejected an offer of $10,000 over 30 years. She rejected it and made a second offer. Council did review that in closed session, but it's the council's wish. If the council wishes to go in closed session, we sure can do that. Now, I believe that it would not be appropriate to go in closed session future council meeting, we surely could go into closed session.
Carrie?
Just to clarify, maybe this is where you were getting at, the hearing that Ms. Leonard mentioned, is a different type of a process than the closed session, correct?
Right. The hearing she's talking about, if she wanted to be in the closed session, she would not be allowed to be in the closed session.
Right, right.
A closed session is not an adjourned meeting.
Okay.
The state statute talks about adjourned. That is not what we're talking about here.
Carrie?
And there was some question about 10,000, 11,000. The 11,000 is really tied to our city appraisal number, and that's why that's the number we're landed on today.
I think at the time we were discussing a letter appraisal, so we had tried to limit the costs to the city for appraisal, and the letter appraisal was less expensive. That letter appraisal came back, estimated the cost to be $10,000 to $15,000. We had made an offer at the low end of the letter appraisal. That offer was rejected, so we went back and got the full appraisal, and the full appraisal came back at $11,000. That's what you're seeing tonight, and that's what the recommendation is for the assessment.
Brad?
We incurred a cost of what, $1,500 for the full appraisal?
Yes.
So even now we would be at the 11,000. That's less because of the fact that we did the full. So yeah, I'm guessing that's why I'm saying justifying the 11,000 as well as go with what's on the appraisal, because we also incurred another cost because of
Right. Further, if our appraisal is accepted, then the costs can be assessed again. The judge has a discretion to assess costs. We do appraisal, expert witness fees, and we would ask attorney fees also be assessed against Ms. Leonard, assuming our appraisal is held up. And we've got an appraisal. The appraisal, I believe you've seen his qualifications. I think they're very good qualifications. He's done a lot of them throughout the state. So I think we've hired a well-qualified appraisal.
Any other questions? Carrie?
So the attorney's fees could be quite high. So we're talking 11,000 plus attorney's fees if it goes to appeal and the judge decides it
Right.
that way.
Right. The judge does grant the attorney fees and the other costs as well.
Okay.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, the resolution is on page 32. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved with the correction that Todd mentioned.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra,
Nay.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, also under unfinished business, adoption of a resolution correcting an error in the resolution related to USDA incurrence of indebtedness for the fire station project. That is on page 34 of the packet.
Mayor members, you may recall that this was included on your last council meeting, and unfortunately, I had an error, and I inserted the number of $9.124 million, which is actually your sales tax number, not your indebtedness number with USDA, which is $9,400,000. As we sent this information into the USDA, they caught that and said, well, you should probably change that. And so I'm back here confessing my error and asking you to approve the resolution, which essentially strikes the old resolution, rescinds the old resolution, and puts a new resolution in place with the appropriate number that was agreed to by the USDA. Again, the information is included in your packet, and the resolution is substantially similar to what you looked at last time with the appropriate number included.
Any questions for Todd? The resolution is found on page begins on page 36 of the packet. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Sherstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Brunette,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBosse.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next on to new business. On page 40, adoption of a resolution accepting intersection control evaluation study for Broadway Avenue, Sunrise Drive, and intersection. I see Jeff and Pete are here to make a report to us.
We are. Mayor Noel, City Council, Jeff and I are going to do a little presentation for you tonight that really covers the in-depth study of the intersection control at Sunrise and Broadway. As you guys are aware, we received some local road improvement project funding and grant funds for this project. And part of what we need to do is work out an agreement with Nicolette County, share it with cost share, and go through the ICE study with Nicolette County Board, which we will do tomorrow morning. And with your guys' approval tonight of the resolution, we will get moving forward on making some improvements there. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Mayor and council members, at your last workshop, we reviewed the ICE, or Intersection Control Evaluation Study in detail. And I'm just going to summarize that real quick. Right now, the current intersection is a four-way stop and operates what they call under a level of service of A and B, meaning, A is the upper end level of service, meaning it performs very well, considering F is a lower end, similar to grades in school. The higher the grade, the better the intersection performs, less delays. So currently the intersection performs quite well, but with growth that's projected in the next 20 years, we're expecting to see a level of service decrease to somewhere in the D, E, and F range, F being the worst. That's primarily due to the growth on the west side of the city. We do see a lot of traffic right now in the morning AM peak hours and the PM school peak hours that have caused queues, I guess, or lines of cars on the westerly leg that approach 1,000 feet or so. I mean, all the way up to the water treatment plant entrance. So it's a rolling queue. It does move, but it is one of those that backs traffic up and causes some people to get agitated. And you'll see once in a while people actually veer off to the right to try to get in the right turn lane on eastbound Broadway Avenue. So the intersection control evaluation, we did analyze that intersection, did some traffic counting over 2 days in September, 2 weekdays. And based on that, we looked at the traffic volumes and pedestrian volumes. Intersection saw on Broadway Avenue approximately about 5,000 vehicles in each leg per day. On Sunrise Drive, a little bit less, somewhere in the 3,700 vehicles per day. As we grow, it's anticipated to approach 10,000 or more on the upper end there. So one thing that was surprising to me, and it was good, I guess, really good to see, is that pedestrian traffic at the intersection, people, bicyclists, walkers, on average there's 40 to 50 crossings per day on each segment there. So that was good to see. I mean, that means people, either residents are using the trails, sidewalks, or students are using the trails, sidewalks to get to and from school. So that was positive. But in the end, we were projecting that the intersection, like I mentioned, will have a level service that is D, E, or F in the future. And with the LRIP funding available, we did take a look at what would be opportunities for the city and for the county, being the county has one leg of the intersection, to improve the intersection. And we looked at doing nothing, of course, and that's the intersection fails basically a D, E, and F failure for the intersection under an always stop condition, doing nothing. We also looked at left turn lanes, a right turn lane. Those didn't perform much better. Then we also looked at a signal and a roundabout, and they performed in the B and C, A range. So with those two, we went into a little bit more depth and did some additional calculating background research and determined ultimately that based on pedestrians and the crash history and safety factors, a number of things, the benefit to cost ratio of a signal system versus a roundabout was less. So a roundabout would have a benefit to cost ratio of a little over 6, whereas a signal system, a signalized intersection, would have a benefit to cost ratio of somewhere about 4.7. So we had made the recommendation to go with the roundabout at that intersection simply because it had the highest benefit to cost ratio. And they are very similar in cost to construct. The physical improvements would be the signal and the roundabout. So with that, I think, as Pete mentioned, we're looking at if the council decides to accept the ICE, the intersection control evaluation study tonight, the next steps would be to go to Nicolette County tomorrow, and we've had some meetings with the county engineer, and they've been positive, and we're hoping the board tomorrow also at a workshop also is receptive to the idea, because with the timing that we have with the LRIP funding, now would be the time to do it, the intersection improvements, especially with the fire hall going in there, coming up here in the near future. So with that, I guess I'll answer any questions.
There's a resolution that we're asking for authorization on page 42.
Questions for Pete or Jeff or Todd? Anything to add?
No, ma'am, I don't have anything to add.
I'll go Carrie, then I'll go Daryl.
Well, I don't have any questions. I think it makes sense to approve the study and get the project moving forward while all the stars align for the fire hall and the needs of that area. But just wanted to say thank you again for going after the LRIP funding and so that can support this project and do the heavy lifting in terms of cost. So it's really exciting to see this move forward. Thank you.
Daryl.
Just a couple questions. How much in LRIP funding, local road improvement funding did you get?
How much did we get?
Yes.
We got 1.25 million.
Yep,
And the project is 1.57,
5.7?
so the difference will have to be made up between the county and the city?
Yeah, we have some utility improvements in there too, so we have some utility funds may cover that cost as well.
There's a few other costs in there. There's some local utilities, sanitary sewer, water. I mean, they're very minor. And there's also the county share of it. Being there, they'd be responsible for one of the legs out of the 4. And then any other costs that wouldn't be eligible would be borne by the city MSA. One thing I did point out at the workshop was the improvements, that 1.25 million that we did receive for LRIP as part of the application. It did include that portion that is in front of the fire hall. So the improvements to Sunrise Drive between Broadway and the north side of the fire hall is included in that overall project.
I see some hands over here. Emily?
Yeah, I don't remember if we talked about this or if someone asked this last week or not, but I was wondering about like a fire truck and managing the roundabout, and if that was a part of the calculations and the study, and just to hear someone talk about that, and if that will work out just fine.
Yeah, roundabouts, if the project moves ahead and, the city does decide to proceed with the roundabout project and construction of the project, the roundabouts are designed to account for those kind of vehicles. We got a unique situation there where Broadway Avenue is CASA 5 on the westerly leg, and so we do have a lot of agricultural equipment that uses that intersection. A lot of it that's coming down Broadway and actually crosses the river. And I remember when the TH-99 bridge, that was one of the big things, was we had to make sure that the bridge was wide enough for kids to sustain that agricultural equipment going back and forth. So that would be the intent also with the roundabout is that ag equipment and the fire apparatuses would also be able to navigate that without any issue.
Great, that's what I thought. I just wanted someone to say. Thank you.
Any other questions? The resolution for accepting the 2021 St. Peter intersection control evaluation study for Broadway Avenue and Sunrise Drive intersection is on page 42. If there aren't further questions, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lrip,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Brewster,
Aye.
Councilmember Ross,
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Next up, thank you, Jeff and Pete. Next up, adoption of a resolution accepting updated plans for American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018. Pete, you don't get to go anywhere.
Mayor Noel and council, as you can see here, and as we have discussed in the past, it's been about a year now since the council last took action on this issue here. Is after this act was implemented, the city of St. Peter was required to complete 2 different phases of this project. Phase 1 is really the risk and resiliency portion of that, and we did complete that portion. It is described on page 43 there. I won't go into too much detail, but we did complete the report as requested through our engineer, Bolton and Mink, who does a lot of our environmental work as well. It's really a vulnerability assessment. As we go out and look for the weaknesses in our system, we have 15 years worth of vulnerability assessment under our belt doing this type of work and recording this information not only with EPA but with the state of Minnesota in a variety of different areas. Part 2 took a little bit more time. As you guys will see, it's a 300-page report when we're basically done with this. And in Part 2, what we do is we tell them how we're going to respond, similar to what we talked about at the last council meeting on our spill prevention and countermeasures. This also says, hey, if we've identified this type of weakness, here's how we're going to respond to that situation. Your water system is very redundant in a lot of our different connections and ties. Our system is sitting in really good shape from our point of view. But we also have implementation measures in this report that talks about how we're going to act when certain things happen. And that's really what you want your staff to know and to do, and to have a resource that we can pull off the shelf, and something that we can be in compliance with on the EPA and the state level. What I'm asking you to do tonight would be to approve the resolution on page 45 that really certifies that you guys are acknowledging that we have submitted both of those phases to the EPA, and that we are in compliance with the intent of the act.
Questions for Pete? Emily?
Not a question, but I think I made this comment when you talked about the other work that you did. Just, I really appreciate all the work that goes into this, and just the proactive plan, and, you know, safety being at the forefront. It just shows that we're well prepared, and thank you and your team for all your work.
We had a lot of experience from 1998 that helped us put a lot of this stuff together. It is great to pull a resource off the shelf and say, here's the direction we're going.
Carrie?
This is mentioned in the memo, but it says that this plan is available on the website.
It will be.
And then, it will be.
Yep.
And then in the AWARE program, which is a safety program for
Correct.
employees, there's training on
Yes,
the plan.
correct.
And that's for specific public works employees that it applies to, correct?
Right, and like an example would be with our water utility. We make all the hazards aware to each of the employees that are there, so they know how to respond, not only to protect themselves, but to protect the citizens here.
Thank you.
Oh, Brad?
Just so, learning from 1998, are your generators better reinforced to withstand a 2x4 driven by a tornado?
Yeah, most of the trees that cause that problem aren't there right now,
Okay.
but we're in the process of rebuilding that.
Okay.
All right, to the resolution on page 45, accepting submittal and completion of self-certification for America's Water Infrastructure Act of 2018 Risk and Resiliency Part 1 and Emergency Response Plan Part 2. If there are no further questions, I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Pettis,
Yes.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Ruthfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Dole,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up is adoption of a resolution authorizing out-of-state travel for council members. That's on page 46 of the packet.
Mayor and members, the information provided indicates that the state statute and the city policy requires a resolution be passed should out-of-state travel occur or be wanted on the part of elected officials. In this instance, the City of St. Peter has on a regular basis sent a couple of elected officials to the annual American Public Power Association Conference in Washington, D.C., APPA. The council had discussion at its last workshop, and a couple members indicated their interest in wanting to attend that, and therefore the resolution is included in your packet that meets the state statute and meets the city policy. In this instance, council members DeVos and Sharpston have indicated their interest in attending. The resolution is on page 47 that allows that to take place.
Questions for Todd? Don't see any questions. I will just thank council members DeVos and Sharpston for their willingness to represent us. The resolution authorizing elected official travel. If there are no further comments or questions, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Ruthfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Abstain.
Mayor Dole,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Up next, on page 44, adoption of a resolution approving a request for city assistance for the all-school reunion.
Mayor members, this starts on page 48, and you'll see information included running into page 49 with a resolution providing the approval for assistance for the all-school reunion, located starting on page 53. I can go through this in a lot greater level of detail, but I do want to indicate that the resolution that you see in front of you is slightly different than their original letter because there have been changes on the part of the committee after meeting with staff related to this. And so generally the event that they're looking to hold will be held in the First National Bank parking lot. They are looking to use a little bit of public right-of-way, primarily some of the sidewalks within that block, and more specifically what I would call the parking lane on the east side of 3rd Street between Nassau and Grace. It's their intent to have vendors placed there as a part of the event. And so the vendors will park there and their windows for sale will be into the parking lot across the sidewalk there, if you can kind of visualize that. So as a part of this, they're required to do a number of things, as with many community festivals and events that you have within your city, which include the appropriate level of insurance. Our goal will be to provide a sufficient security that would be at their cost, allow them to use the portable light standards that the city owns, them paying the cost as per the fee schedule that you have in place. Any barricades that we might have, which are very few, they'll likely be providing or renting the vast majority of those. And electricity, they would access electricity for some of the events and activities, primarily the whatever they use to set the band on, whether it's a band shell or whether it's a trailer, they would access that using their own electrician and approval from the City of St. Peter from a transformer that lies in the alley. Think about it as kind of behind Nutters there is a great way to think about that. That's really the extent of this, except mentioning that it would be on July 2nd is the primary date for the event. They're excited to move forward and have had a lot of discussion within their committee on activities. Some of the things that they have looked at continues to be, again, they do and will have in place the insurance. Any vendors have to be licensed appropriately, as do they, and they'll make sure that they have enough porta potties, some of which will be handicap accessible for the activities and for the event. Again, there's information in your packet, and the resolution is on page 53.
Questions for Todd? Carrie?
I don't have a question, but I know that this event has been delayed for a couple years due to the pandemic, and so there's a lot of anticipation for this event. And it sounds like it's open to the public, so you can be an adopted St. Peter High School alumni if you want to, if you'd like to go.
I have just a question of clarification. So with the setup that they're planning, we're not going to be closing a street as they had originally requested?
They'd originally requested that the street be closed, primarily Grace Street, at least a portion of it. I think they've reconsidered that based on discussion with city staff for a number of different reasons. Let me articulate maybe a couple. One of which is that from a safety standpoint, that's a big concern. And with the rules that we're trying to work with related to DOT and access off Highway 169, it's a challenge at times to see those roads closed off because traffic will be, in this instance, driving south on 169 and certainly want to try and turn into that area. So getting traffic to avoid that spot is a challenge. Also, one other item that I think was very important to them based on what they perceived their demographic to be, that would eliminate a lot of parking stalls in that block or so. And their ability certainly to get some of their attendees closer rather than further is paramount within their thought process. And so this allows those parking spots to stay in place, again, except other than those along 3rd Street that are parallel parking and are going to be utilized by their vendors.
Brad?
I noticed that, well, at least it's written that the police reserves are at the committee's expense and we're billing the portable generators. There's no mention about the picnic tables being delivered to and from the event site by city staff. Is that at the city's expense then?
Yeah, that's one of the expenses that we show listed in here in my estimate of the total cost, Councilmember DeVos, and so you'll see that that is typically has a very high value, but typically we don't charge for that activity. We have not traditionally done that for really any of the festivals or events that have been in place. We've provided that as a part of the city's contribution towards events that bring people to your community.
Okay.
The resolution approving city assistance request for the 2022 all-school reunion event is on page 53. If there aren't any further questions, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Brunette?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of a resolution approving a request for the city's assistance for the St. Peter Ambassadors St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Madam Mayor, members, as was mentioned by the mayor, this is an event that is hosted by the St. Peter Ambassadors, and they're hoping to have a parade again on March 17th. I typically joke about this one. You haven't lived until you've been hit by a frozen Tootsie Roll on St. Patrick's Day within St. Peter. And so this is a really nice family event that occurs generally later in the afternoon, early evening. There have been past times when it has occurred on a weekend where it has been a little bit earlier in the day, but they're looking to do something right around 5 o'clock. I say right around 5 o'clock because oftentimes they struggle to start exactly on time, but they do a very nice job of inviting people to the community and providing a wonderful family-friendly event along 3rd Street. They're looking for additional traffic control along the parade route, which is generally on 3rd Street from Broadway to Mulberry. They would ask that we put up no parking signs for that area. I will tell you that we typically do not tow. Those signs go up right around lunchtime generally, but we typically don't tow. It's really as a safety issue to try and discourage a lot of traffic in that area and people darting in and out during the parade as that event occurs over that 4-block area. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, including staging area, which is typically on the north side of Broadway on 3rd Street. And the parade moves quite quickly and then disperses quite quickly. And again, we're happy to provide whatever service you feel is appropriate, but the resolution indicates that we'll provide with assistance with traffic control. We'll start that at about 4 o'clock, give or take a little bit, the designation of no parking. And of course, cones and other miscellaneous items to help identify the area. I do think it's important to mention that the ambassadors are required as well to provide for the $1.5 million in insurance as a part of this listing the city as an additionally insured. The resolution is on page 57.
Questions for Todd? Seeing none, the resolution authorizing city assistance for the St. Patrick's Day Parade, as Todd said, is on page 57. Call the roll, please, Barb.
Motion.
Oh, we need a motion and a second, don't we?
So moved?
Second.
Oh, wonderful. Now we can vote on it.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Sherristrom.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. I was just so excited to have a parade in St. Peter. Next up, adoption of a resolution approving execution of Nicolette County contract for library services, and that starts on page 58 in your packet.
Madam Mayor and members, this is something that the City Council has taken action on really for now a couple of decades. I can get into a lot of history, but I'll avoid that unless you have questions. But generally, this is a contract with Nicolette County whereby they provide money to the City of St. Peter for library services that can be accessed by their residents. In all frankness, you really don't have a choice under the state rules. You have to provide library access anyway, but also under the state rules, they have a minimum maintenance of effort for library services, so they must spend money on library services. The amount of money, as you see starting on page 58, has changed over the years, but not significantly. The latest version of that changed in about 2019, and they are proposing to provide you with $50,000 approximately, which goes into your library fund and supports library services. As you see within the memo, and as I've mentioned to the council on previous occasions, the amount of money that Nicolette County provides has not kept pace with inflation or the cost of operating a library. But if they did not provide those resources, that'd be a pretty big hole in your budget. And so there's a balancing act that we're trying to do. I will mention that every year North Mankato and the City of St. Peter get together, and the city administrators from both communities communicate with the Nicolette County and solicit additional funds. We typically do that in June or July of each year while the county is working on updating their budget. But this year they have proposed an amount of $50,044. Happy to answer any questions related to the history of this or how this moves forward, but the contract is included in your packet, and the resolution starts or is included in the packet on page 63.
Questions for Todd, Brad?
How is the minimum maintenance of effort determined?
The minimum of maintenance has been determined by the state of Minnesota, and actually Nicolette County and places like St. Peter, since we have a library, receive a letter from the Department of Administration on that. And essentially it goes like this. Other than very, very few exceptions which have occurred when counties or cities have been unallotted local government aid or other state funding, the amount cannot go down. And so it's a number that is indexed against, I believe, 1999. And so it's not specifically tied, I don't believe, to a population number because it hasn't changed based on population. It's really requiring the library services to be provided, and under the state of Minnesota, it's deemed appropriate that as long as the amount that is being paid by that local jurisdiction does not go down, you're doing something related to library services, and so you're good.
So basically this $50,044 is above whatever the 1999 rate indexed to now is?
I wouldn't say indexed to now because it's really not indexed against anything.
I thought you
It's a
just said
flat number.
Oh,
If I said indexed, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't, it's not indexed against inflation or anything like that. That sets the threshold at which they have to be at. And this number is higher. They are levying currently $10,000 than they did, say, in $10,000 more than they did, say, in 2017, 16, 15, et cetera. So they did provide for an increase in that 2018 to 2019 year. The reason that we are about $5,000 more, but I did say they increased their levy about $10,000, is about $5,000 goes to North Mankato as well.
Other questions? Carrie?
When you wrote the letter with North Mankato to the county, did you specify a dollar amount, a target dollar amount, or was it just a request for more funds? not
We specified a requested increase of $20,000, and then we provided information related to the kinds of services that have changed over the last number of years that continue to make it exceedingly easier for rural residents to access library services. Things like Hoopla are a great example of that, which is an additional cost to the library here in St. Peter. But those services are clearly used by city residents as well. So anyway.
And it's difficult to determine who's using those services because the county has said in the past that they're interested in data to determine how often rural residents use library services, but it's difficult to extrapolate that data just based on the number of services and who uses it.
I think that's true in many respects, but let me provide some clarity. So it is not very difficult to determine how many library cards that are assigned to residents of St. Peter, how many materials they check out, or how many non-city residents check out materials from our library. That is definable. There's data that supports that. We do have some of our electronic programs, like Hoopla is a great example of that, and I don't know the reason why, but Hoopla doesn't collect that data. And so they can't tease out whether it was a city resident that checked out this program or bought or took out that audio book or used that audio file. They just don't retain that data. And so we're unable to get it. And I know that's been a concern, or concern is maybe too strong. That's been additional information that the county would want to see that we just aren't able to provide because it's not available.
In the letter, we are able to provide though data regarding how many out-of-town residents have library cards and.
Yep, and we do regularly provide that, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Emily?
Yeah, I'm just going to provide a little more context from the library board. Just saying that, we talk about this from time to time, and I know that Todd and the city does a lot to ask for this money, and it's so needed, and it's so helpful. And I just can't imagine our library reducing or changing its service level. Like, it just does so much for this community. They work above and beyond. They just do such a good job. And so I'm very supportive, Todd, of all of your efforts to make this go and ask for these increases every year. Even if it doesn't happen for us, I know that it's just really important. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, no, it's my pleasure to help. I think, again, this is really a balancing act. Under state statute, cities don't have to have libraries. Counties do. You could make a decision to get out of the library business. That would then require Nicolette County to get into the library business. They may not provide the type or level or amount of services that you have become accustomed to or are interested in. And so I don't know that that's an alternative. We don't want this necessarily, at least from my perspective, to become political or a push and shove against various government agencies or entities. Our real goal is to provide really good services to your community, which you do. We'd love to see the amount of money that they provide you increase. We think that there's rational, reasonable justification in that. Just in the cost of inflation, how it impacts employee costs, cost of books, cost of bibliographies, you name it. All of those things have not stayed flat over the past, 10 years or 5 years. You pick a time frame. So anyway, the contract's within your packet, and the recommendation is to approve it, and that's a part of that resolution on page 63.
Yeah, I just want to add on to Emily's comments. Having served on the library board myself for 2 terms, the library does such excellent work for people across their lifespan in St. Peter from every walk of life, and they do tremendous work. I would love to see them get more money, but that's not going to happen today. Not with the resolution we have before us on page 63, authorizing execution of library services contract. Unless there are more comments, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstown,
Aye.
Councilmember Brumbault.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, adoption of an ordinance related to implementation of the local option sales tax. That begins on page 64 in your packet.
Mayor members, you will see that information in your packet and a draft ordinance. I want you to know that notice has been provided under state statute for at least 10 days on your website related to the passage or the potential passage of a sales tax ordinance. This is a slightly different version than what you see on the web page. The significant changes are changes that have been recommended by the Minnesota Department of Revenue and reviewed by your city attorney related to what we had termed within the ordinance that is online as excise tax, related primarily to automobiles. That's no longer necessary according to the Department of Revenue, and so I've certainly provided them with opportunity to comment because they are charged with, or will ultimately be charged with, helping collect this tax, along with the rest of the sales tax. This is part and parcel of moving forward with your fire station project, in that, as you may recall, in November there was a election relative to whether a state or a sales tax, a half-cent sales tax, should be imposed, which is approved by the local voters. This is one more step in that process, that step being having an ordinance in place that sets the tax, how it works, what it's going to be used for, and the amounts. You'll see that $9.1 million listed in here. That coincides with the state statute that was approved as a part of the first special session here during the last session of the Minnesota State Legislature. Be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have. Maybe the biggest is, so when does the sales tax start? Under this ordinance, it would be July 1st, July 1st of 2022. We aren't responsible ultimately for providing notice to that. We certainly will talk about in the hot sheet and on our website and all those things. But ultimately, those folks that have tax ID numbers would receive a notification of this in advance of July 1st from the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Really, the last portion related to the Department of Revenue is a bunch of correspondence, but as we get a little bit closer to this time frame, likely in May or June, I will be coming back to you with an agreement that the city is required to put in place with the Minnesota Department of Revenue that articulates the process for their collection. That's part of the overall state statute, not just related to St. Peter, but related to any community that has a local option sales tax. So that still is yet to come. They don't provide that until we get a little bit further down the road. That's why it's not here before you tonight. Steps in the process, important step, city ordinance, recommendation is to approve.
Questions for Todd? Daryl?
Just a process question here, since this is an ordinance amendment or a new ordinance, do we have to have a public hearing on this, and what's the process for adopting a new ordinance?
So we don't have to have a public hearing on this. We have to provide public notice that you are going to address it at tonight's meeting, which was done according to the rules. And so from a publication standpoint, when it's completed, the ordinance itself on page 69, Daryl, provides for a summary publication. So if you do approve it tonight, there'll be a summary publication in the paper and certainly on your website as well. And so that's under section 46-87, provides for the summary publication.
Are we doing the $20 per motor vehicle as part of the local option sales?
So this is part of the state statute, and that's been part of the discussion that I've had with the Minnesota Department of Revenue. So that, as I understand it from the Department of Revenue, is part of the state statute now, and that's what's provided for. Under state statute, we cannot do something above and beyond that. That's not allowed as a part of the statute.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The resolution on page 66 for an ordinance amending St. Peter City Code Chapter 46 taxation and adopting by reference St. Peter City Code Chapter 1 sections 1 through 6, which among other things contain penalty provisions. Begin on page 66. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstown,
Aye.
Councilmember Brumbault,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, it's our last item under new business. Adoption of a resolution calling for executive session.
Mayor and members, the resolution is on page 7. I'm asking you to provide for a closed session so that we can discuss negotiations with Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 241, which is the police officers. Madam Mayor and members, based on whatever conversation you might have during this closed session, it's my intent to come back to you with a recommendation for approval of a contract, but that certainly will be your call. But that's my intent. Certainly you would come back into open session really only then for reports and to adjourn, if not further discussing the potential union contract. Again, the resolution providing for closed session is on page 70.
Unless there are any questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution calling for a closed session.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Graham?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpsburg?
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal?
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye. So we will adjourn to a closed session. It is 8:06 p.m.
Don't worry.
Quite honestly.
29. And we are about to consider the adoption of a resolution authorizing execution of labor contract between city and law enforcement labor services, local 241, police officers.
Madam Mayor, member, I've presented information to you at 2 previous goal sessions related to negotiations with LELS 241, the police officers. We've come to an agreement, I believe, if the council so approves and acts in the resolution that's attached to this memo. The agreement would be a 2-year agreement for the years 2022 and 2023. In 2022, officers would receive a wage increase of 3% across the board plus market adjustments. Those market adjustments for officers would be $3, for detectives it would be $4, and for sergeants it would be $4.50 per hour. Again, that's depending on the job title. In addition to that, there'd be a modification of the emergency response requirement from 20 minutes to 25 minutes. And then there are some technical changes in the contract, as always, dates, names, those types of things, any typos that we might find as a part of that. I will tell you that the fiscal impact of this is approximately $97,000 above what you had budgeted for, and this is driven by 2 primary factors, at least in my mind, 2 primary factors. One of which is basic economic supply and demand for police officers. The supply of police officers within our state, frankly within the country, has gone down dramatically. That's driven by 2 primary things, one of which fewer and fewer people getting into the profession of law enforcement. Second of which is really what one could term as an exodus of people from law enforcement, based on age, but also based on circumstance related to individual departments or communities as a whole, or our nation as a whole. And so it is supply and demand that drives part of this. I would also tell you the second issue within our area are comp studies and other communities increasing wages in a manner that makes it very, very difficult for us to be in a position to hire new officers when we're in need. And we need to continue to be competitive, not just to hire base officers, but to hire officers that are empathetic and have good judgment and understand what policing is like and how you want it to be done within our community, the community of St. Peter. Again, happy to answer any questions that you might have relative to this. The typical process for this is for you to talk about it in closed session. The officers are then, according to the process that we utilized, required to vote on a contract, so they have already approved this contract. If you choose not to, that's okay. That is certainly within your purview. But I make them come to the table with a signed contract. We don't want to have to go back and forth once you've taken action on a contract, and so that's the basis for why that process works in that manner. Again, Madam Mayor, happy to answer any questions, but on the back side of this is a resolution providing for entering into that contract with LELS for the 22 and 23 years. One item that somebody always asks is that, well, it's January. Does this go back to January 1st? yes, this would go retroactively back to January 1st.
Questions for Todd? I don't hear any questions. The resolution approving contract by and between the City of St. Peter and Law Enforcement Labor Services, Local 241, police officers for calendar years 22 and 23. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenthal,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up on our agenda is reports. And I guess I'm first up on that. I just wanted to express my gratitude to everybody who's accepted positions on our city boards and commissions. We need a few more people, so I hope anybody who's interested in St. Peter and our well-being and what we do behind the scenes to make all of this work, I hope that they'll extend an expression of interest to the city administrator's office, to myself, to any of the council members, because it's important work and it's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting, I think. And a second extension of gratitude, we've finally been hit by all this winter weather, and thank you to everybody who keeps our streets clean so we can get to work and ambulances and fire trucks can get where they need to go. It's important and I appreciate it. So that's all from me.
Madam Mayor, just a couple, really 3 reports. I know 2 are listed here. The first one relates to COVID masking, just a reminder, in city buildings. Whether it's out at the Public Works offices or City Hall or at the community center, masks continue to be required. That would change potentially should the transmission rate go down according to the CDC rule. That's what we've been indexed against previously. I also want to mention Minnesota River Valley Transit Fares. As many of you know, we've talked about this before, and the MRVT board took action at the end of last year to establish rates for the new year. We were unable to put those in place due to some software challenges from Route Match, which is our software provider. We believe that those are solved, and so we are very, very likely to start charging fares on January 31st, which is a Monday. So be ready for that. Generally, the fare for most riders will be at $3, both in St. Peter and in Le Sueur. The last one that I have is I'm going to call on Pete. Pete was at, as he normally is, as our department had our leadership meeting on Monday afternoons, and indicated that he had received word that the electric utility has received an award. And so, Pete, if you wouldn't mind talking about that just a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
I will. Thanks, Todd. One of the awards that Todd is talking about is we received information that we are going to retain the platinum level RP3 award for reliable public power provider. That speaks highly of what your utility is putting out as far as service. It's really judged on 4 things. It's a real high proficiency in reliability, safety, workforce development, and system improvements. And it takes a lot of people in this organization to make this happen, all the way from finance to administration to the linemen themselves and the leadership that Jason and his crew are showing throughout the community to make this happen. There's roughly 2,000 public electric utilities in the United States. About 10% of those have qualified for this level of award. There are 14 communities in Minnesota that have made this level of designation, and we are in the top 6 as far as how that's laid out. So there's still one more level that we can get to. We're going to work hard over the next 3 years to try to make that next level. That is the diamond level. But right now we're struggling along at about 96% on our efficiency rating. So I guess if there's room for improvement, we've got a little to go. But really happy with where we're going on that. We have been a RP3 designated utility for the last 6 years. And so we'll start our next adventure here and work for improvement.
Mayor, members, if I could add one thing, it not only takes folks like Pete and the crews, but it takes a council willing to invest in some of the infrastructure that's necessary to maintain that reliability. I think the data within St. Peter clearly shows that as the city council has made investments in technology and in equipment that provides for additional reliability. The amount of outages you have gone down, and though you've spent money to make that happen.
Correct.
And so we want to make sure to emphasize that's an important part of this overall process as well. We have the good fortune of having good crew, newer systems, and a community that's been willing to invest in ensuring that their power is on much more than it is in many other communities. And so we appreciate that and want to try to continue to keep that rolling.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
What
thank
an
you.
honor. Well deserved.
Thanks, Pete. Madam Mayor, members, that's all I have for reports for you this evening, except to remind you that don't park downtown overnight tonight, because we're cleaning up in the downtown. Plowbacks have been going on, and we want to remind people that when they move their cars off the street when it snows, it helps them, it helps their neighbors, it helps our crews, it allows us to do it more cost effectively, and frankly, it looks better, works better, and is easier for everyone. And so we want to remind folks of that too. Yeah, thank you, Barb. Yeah, Barb mentioned shoveling sidewalks. Lots of people utilize the sidewalks and the trails within our community, so please take care of the sidewalk by your house. Those are important things for your friends and neighbors.
And may I add one more, the fire hydrant.
Oh yeah, we do a little bit of work with that. We have a number of folks that adopt a fire hydrant near their house or in their neighborhood, so we certainly appreciate that. Thank you.
If there's nothing further, I think we're ready to adjourn. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. 8:39.
It's about adopt a council member's driveway.
We did, we tried that for most.
No, I don't think, these aren't.